right there across from where we're having the farmers markets at, on the little corner lot there, the gym boy, I don't know who owns that, but I would have to maybe like a community garden or something like that, so it's a little nice and beautiful, and community will be able to interact with each other, things like that. So things like that. Pretty much run the homeless office, things like that.
Yeah, so just to recap,
Coming up live at 11 o'clock this morning from City Hall in Marysville, the Marysville D Street Enhancement Grant meeting. Mary?
And then also just sort of that parcel on the corner there, improvements for that. And that's something that I think is a little outside of the scope of this grant, but it's definitely a great comment to receive. So thank you. Okay, I'm going to come on up this side for comments. No, we're good. Yeah.
Good morning. So my biggest opinion about this is we really should do something and do it well. So stretching yourself thin and trying to touch on all of these different elements, but doing a half-assed job is not going to help get people to downtown Marysville. So specifically when it comes to the lighting, the bistro lights is the no-brainer. When you look at these pictures, that is what is inviting and would get people to want to walk around and come out in downtown Marysville. If we do the individual grants, much like Chuck said, who knows if it'll get done, what exactly will be done, where it will be installed, what businesses will install it, and it won't be welcoming and it just won't look right. We already have some street lighting, and the city made an effort last year to clean and replace the light bulbs, and there was minimal difference seen with doing that. So I don't think the posts are going to work any better than what we already have. Drinking stations are great, bicycle parking is fine, the bollards are great, and with Randy, I think the lifted sidewalks are a waste of resources, and I know how this works. $185,000 is not very much, so there's my opinion.
I'm not sure, as far as D Street, how far down is this, just between 3rd and 4th, all the way down to 9th Street? What's the scope?
That's an excellent question. Thank you so much for asking. I really should have covered that at the top. So we're really prioritizing 3rd and 4th, but the grant covers 3rd to 6th. So the different types of improvements that can be made will vary, depending on what we choose to implement. It might limit the scope of where we physically go. But that's not, again, this is not the end. We're trying to just, stair steps up and up and up. And so, this will be step 1. And I'm hearing thus far that the priority is really on fewer, more impactful, higher quality, longer lasting improvements. So that's some really great feedback. You, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you. I first want to thank the city for the fact that I no longer have to write a check every year to get my street light lit. I've been around a little while, so lighting, I'm just happy there's street lights that work. Please no benches, because they will simply become a place of gathering for those who live on the streets, and we already have enough of that. On the sidewalk, I have no preference, raised or not. Obviously repainting, because the sidewalks that are there, we already almost get hit by cars in the intersection. Anyway, if anybody walks downtown, they have experienced that. I would mind some flashing something, somebody can push a button, because even though it's at the intersection, I still almost get hit by cars, or they just go and pay no attention to me, let alone in the middle of not only the middle of the block. I'm on 4th Street, full disclosure, I'm right at High Street. I have a very brightly colored awning, not the color of anyone else's, so you can find me. But I am impacted by D Street, obviously, and we would love some of this to flow outside so it doesn't just start at D, but the entrance to D Street comes off of all of these numbered side streets. So we would like a way to pull those things in together. Those cafe lights, with all the awnings on the buildings, you'll have to show us how that's going to work logistically, because so many of the buildings have awnings. So.
Yeah, so just to touch on, to recap and then touch on a few of those points. It's the city, like the downtown business core is far more than just E Street, and I think the city recognizes that, and this is really important. If we did implement these festoon or cafe style lights, they would have to be really high up. They would be above the awnings, and that's because we need to get fire trucks safely underneath these. So these would be very tall poles that would be supporting them, which, you know, this image that's shown is actually a pedestrian or is not a fire truck access road, so they would have to be a little taller than that image shown on the left there. So just for context on those lights. And I appreciate all of those comments. Thank you. Could you pass that down? Of course.
So I'm speaking for the three of us. So we were thinking this is what, so the brick does a beautiful job of putting greenery and flowers. The two pots, there was a pot in front of my store and one across the street that's a vacant. I've been keeping up on those plants because I know that beauty brings people, flowers bring people. So because we can't put signage up on our buildings, I think the lighting is extremely important because I can tell you, you cannot see what businesses are under those awnings if there's no signage or lighting in there. So to me, the awnings kind of like hide the beauty of what we have and displayed in our windows. So we need to really brighten that up. The flowers, greenery, people attract to that because they think of nature, beauty. The raised sidewalks to me is kind of a waste of time because we have to move furniture in and out of a lot of our stores because we sell it. That could become part of a problem to have to keep going up and down those types of dips. Was there anything else I'm missing? I said the awnings. Oh, the awnings, some of them are really damaged. So that's something that we need to either work with the business owners that own the building to make them back to pretty, I guess. I think that's it.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks so much for that feedback. I appreciate it.
It sounds like we all love the cafe lighting, and it sounds like it's going to be difficult. How feasible is it? And if it takes past the Peach Festival, I think that shouldn't be a problem because this is like a long-term goal situation. But just how hard exactly and how long?
So exactly is a really hard one to answer at this level of the design work. It is feasible. Like in terms of, can this be done? Yes. Like we have street lights. We can put in essentially similar poles to string these cafe lights from. These are like, these are not like the kinds you get at Home Depot. You know, these are like commercial civic scale cafe lights. They last a really long time. They're LED, but the funds in this grant, because these are a more expensive option, there will be a lot fewer, it won't stretch as far. Physically, it won't stretch as far. And how these actually cost out, we'll have to see. But we're hoping that we can set a precedent with what's selected in this grant for future continuation. Yeah. Yeah. So here, and then I know we had one down here that was from a while back. So let me do this, and then we'll come back, and then we'll come back to you too.
Great. Just a really quick question. So whether it's lighting or any of the other improvements that have been suggested, what is the maintenance plan and the funds that have been identified at the city to maintain any improvements?
That's an excellent question. Does anyone from the city want to touch on maintenance? Have Vincenzo?
So, Vincenzo Garage, the public director. Any installation that we do, the city will just absorb the maintenance of it after the fact. So, lighting, if there's a bulb burned out or some electrical issues, we'll maintain it. It becomes part of the city's infrastructure.
I'll add to that. Jesse and I had several things actually. Jesse had mentioned the garbage and recycling containers and the drinking fountain, bottle filler facility. Those are under another grant, and so those don't need to be included in this budget. But particularly the recycling and refuse containers, those will have to be emptied by hand, and the city is already committed to doing that. versus the not so attractive ones that are emptied by automated trucks. So any of the stuff that we're doing down there, I guess my point is that will have to be maintained, and the city will have to maintain it. When we're talking about lights, particularly with the newer LED lights, they're fairly low maintenance, but they still require some maintenance. If we do cafe lights, I think the big concern there is when somebody comes through with a too high load and rips them all out, they have to be fixed. So those are the things we need to consider when we do it. I did want to make a point though, that this is not a large grant. And I don't want to discourage people from putting ideas out there, particularly, there seems to be particular interest in the cafe lights. If we can't get them done with this grant, we can start planning and looking for grants, funding opportunities that may be able to fund that. So please, if you have preferences, let us know, and then we'll start planning accordingly and look for that money to do additional work. The other thing that came up is, do we have to limit it to D Street? I would say there may be some flexibility in that, but the grant is titled even D Street, so it needs to be somewhat centered around D Street. We might be able to spill over into other areas, but once again, we don't have that much money to work with. So, we're going to have to budget what we do, either the number of different types of improvements we do, as Heather had mentioned, and or the area in which we encompass. So this meeting is really to get ideas, and then we're going to have to go back and sharpen our pencils and figure out what can be done.
Thanks, Jim. So we have a couple more comments. I'm going to touch on right here, and then we'll come back to you two, and then a few over here. We have a lot, this is great, we have a lot more comments.
Thank you. So there are a lot of businesses, new businesses that are coming to downtown. It's increasing pedestrians. I'm one of them. My daughter and I, because we're residents of downtown, we walk as much as we can. We avoid the car as much as we can, and therefore, I know that there are a lot of business owners here today that are my favorite. We visit often, and it's because we don't have to get in our car. Walking through the crosswalks gets dangerous, not just for me, but especially for my daughter. There are times where people come to a stop in the crosswalk while we are crossing. I carry her as much as I can. So the raised crosswalks, that is incredibly important to me and to, I think, the business owners too, because you're increasing the chances that people like me are going to come and visit you on a regular basis. The temporary bollards, can they be implemented into those raised crosswalks?
Yeah, so the temporary bollards, we're going to want to work with traffic engineering to figure out the actual best place to put them, and we're going to probably need to work with fire on that. So technically, like construction-wise, yes, they can absolutely be implemented into those raised crosswalks. Physically, I think they might need to go just behind the crosswalk. From my experience in similar areas, but that's something that's like a pretty detailed level of like, exactly how far we space them from the curb. But yes, they're both compatible with each other. Absolutely.
So I think you guys should have closed down D Street like yesterday. That should have already been happening. If you go to Grass Valley, I think it's Mill Street, you can see it in practice. There's other cities that have done it. I think we're probably going to need the temporary bollards considering the Christmas parade, Veterans Day parade, go through that area. I can't imagine they'd want to go down other places. As far as the raised crosswalks, pedestrian deaths are increasing in this country because cars are getting bigger. We have lifted trucks, oversized SUVs constantly traveling down tight, busy streets around here. Some people driving them literally cannot see in front of them and see those people. That's why we need raised crosswalks. As my wife just mentioned, she walks with our child. Someone in an oversized truck or SUV can't see them if they're a certain distance, and there's no raised crosswalk. So that's why we need it. We need pedestrians downtown. We need people walking downtown. People say there's no parking, there's plenty of parking. As in every city, you park somewhere, you walk 2 blocks. The goal here is to have people stay, walk around, enjoy all the shops. It's not a suburb, it's not a mini mall. You don't park, an even longer distance, say you went to Walmart and walk to the front of the door. You want people to stay and be involved in your downtown. I think raised walks, lighting, plants, the build-outs, we need that. My only concern right now is that we don't have the businesses in place to make the nighttime vibrant for it. We don't have the restaurants so we can put the parklets outside. I know that stuff is coming. Probably if we install things like this, that'll be more inviting to those kinds of businesses. So that's my only concern is that we're not there yet, but I can see that being, if we build it, maybe they will come. Who knows?
One last suggestion, the suggestion about shade, trees. Please consider trees.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. I know trees, there's some missing trees right now, and that's definitely something to consider as a part of this project. So I have 2 people here that's going to touch on, and I'm going to switch over to this side.
I'm just curious, at one point it was kind of brought up, I think Dan had said it kind of jokingly, and at one point at the Marysville Business Alliance, we had also suggested that we thought a water feature, like, water shooting out of just the D Street would be good to bring kids. And of course he said, that's really expensive. And he kind of winked and said, unless the MBA would like to pay for it. So I'm curious if there is a quote completed for these bistro lights, and let's say it's $230,000 or something. Is that something that maybe the Marysville Business Alliance or another nonprofit could do a fundraiser for and host some type of event to help pitch in funds for this? Or is it something that you can't accept any outside funds to get the work done?
We can definitely accept outside funds. But, this is the type of thing that grantors are looking for too. They're looking for interest and commitment within the community. And so I would say, if, and I don't want to influence this too much, but if we're dead set on bistro lights, then we would go out hunting for grants for bistro lights and see what we can dig up. We got our engineer here. He can probably come up with a rough estimate of what it's going to cost. Is he shaking his head no? And we can get quotes to see what it is. But I think this is a good opportunity to understand what we want first, and then we will go pursue it. And we have this short-term $185,000 that we want to spend. And I'll also mention Grass Valley. Grass Valley started very similar to this. They, during COVID, they shut down the streets, but they didn't do their major remodel. And I suspect that they did this kind of smaller activity. And then I remember being up there and they were getting public input for the big project. And likely they applied for a grant and got a grant to do the bigger work. And that's how I foresee this would happen here.
Yeah, this is like a fantastic opportunity to do what everyone wants to line us up for the next sort of set of work, and also create some, some decisions, some typologies, or like typical ideas that we can start implementing further also. So I'm going to hop over here, so I know you've been waiting a long time, and we'll come back.
Everybody likes the booster lights. I'm not on T, I'm on third. But instead of having the booster lights go from light to building, why not just string them from light pole to light pole? At least you get what you want. If there's too much of a gap between the poles, add a pole. It cuts down on the cost of the lights, and you don't have to worry about the structure, but at least you get them strung. You can also put poles at the 3rd Street Park, in that empty lot right there next to Jim Boy's. You can put some poles in there and string some lights around there. It would cut the cost a whole lot if you just went pole to pole rather than across. And it all looks great and fine, but evidently it's not feasible and you can't do it. The other thing is, when we walked in, you said you had a grant for $280,000, and what are you doing with the other $100,000 that's sitting back and you're only spending $185,000?
So this grant includes a couple of different aspects. It includes all of the construction components, which is $185,000. It also has design. So this meeting, this conceptual design plan that's coming out of this meeting specifically, the draft is being looked at by the community, that's being revised, and then it's turning into construction documents. There's a cost associated with that. And then there's also there's an education component as a part of this grant. And I think a lot of these grants are interesting because the grantors are looking for specific things. So this education component is going to be great. It's for things like
Bike rodeo.
I'm sorry?
Like bike rodeo.
Yeah, like bike mobile, something like that. There's a component of that, and then there is a contingency, and the contingency is a pretty good sized contingency. Looking at about 15 to 20% contingency. We do not want to design up to the total budget amount and then come up short halfway through construction. So we might be able to raise this number a little bit as we get our cost estimate dialed in, because we can reduce the amount of contingency, and that's typical for a construction process like this. You start with 20% below what you have, and then you go to 10% of what you have, and then you save that. So during construction, if you drill a hole and you find out that you've hit something, which we really aim to never do ever.
It happens.
But it has happened. That's what that contingency is for. So the city always works with contingency budgets for these kinds of things. So that's the difference between where we're at, but like our design budget is what I call it, which is 185. That's how much we're designing to, and how much this grant is for.
Which was 230. About 250. Not
250. It's 230.
It was 280.
Is the city's match? 250 is for the grant, and then the city's matching 30 on top of that.
Can you ask how many business owners are open after 5 p.m.? Because we're looking
I
at
would love
lighting,
to.
but
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually great. Let's do a little poll. Jim, would you mind counting for me? Should I ask John to do that? He's probably better at counting. Okay, I would like to, first I'm going to ask how many business owners are open after 5, and then I'm going to ask how many would like to be open after 5. Okay? So please raise your hand if you are a business owner who is open after 5. And just keep them up for a minute.
on D Street. Right, on D
I
Street.
think that we're doing this proportionally to the number of people in the room.
I count 13.
And because part of this effort, we really want this to be a model to help us move forward with the whole downtown business district. Okay, how many people are not currently open after 5, but would like to be if there's people and lighting? I think some arms over here almost hurt people. They were
Raise your hand.
Great, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Okay. This is great. This is really great feedback, I think, for the city to understand and for us to understand as we design this. I saw we had a comment over here, and then we're going to come back over here. They're all over the place.
I just want to piggyback on Heather's question about Marysville Business Alliance maybe doing fundraisers in order to contribute, and you being our grant expert, I wanted to ask the question of, are there potential grant opportunities out there that a nonprofit or maybe even a BID, a business improvement district, would actually qualify for that a municipality wouldn't qualify for, right? Something that's geared towards nonprofits that maybe if we formed a BID or if a nonprofit were to qualify, that additional funds could come in and partner with the grant that we're going after. And maybe there's not, but I thought it was worth the question.
Yeah. That's an excellent question. There are grants geared for different audiences. I kind of specialize in ones that are geared for public agencies, cities, and counties, because that's the work I mostly do. But there are certainly grants that are really only geared for nonprofits, for example, or only geared for certain kind of business associations, business districts, that kind of thing. So that is an option, certainly. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but it's something that if there was interest in looking into that, or if the city came across one and there was a contact person, maybe that makes sense. Did you have something to add there, Jim?
Yes. Here's, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but here is what I typically see in grants. There are grants geared towards like businesses and business promotion, economic development, but oftentimes they want an agency like the city, the county, to be the lead, and that is because they want to make sure that there is financial stability and a large enough staff to manage the grant. And so when they look at a group or a PBID type of thing, they often don't know how stable that organization is going to be, and they want us, the city, to often co-sign, so to speak. And we're more than happy to do that. We've done that quite often. They're called pass-through grants, typically. So that's why you may not see any or many large-scale grants for individual business owners or even PBIDs.
Yeah, and the other thing to note is that, like, the MBA's letter of support helped the city get this grant that we're talking about right now. So even if the city is the one pursuing the grant, partnerships with an organization are really, they can be really impactful and helpful, and matching community dollars, which is where the community or some organization within the community raises funds to help match a certain portion, are also often give like extra points for that grant assessment, because it shows how much the community wants it, and that's what people want to give money to is projects that the community wants. So that, you know, that kind of thing is really helpful. Okay, we have a whole bunch of comments. We have a whole bunch more comments. This is wonderful. Okay, I know you had your hands up for a while here, and then we'll move on back again.
I have a business on D Street, and I would like to reiterate what was said earlier about my wish in general is for the money to be thoughtfully and well used for the projects that it's earmarked for. Nothing more disappointing to me when money is spent on something and then a year later it's dug up and done a different way. And I know sometimes things work out that way just innocently, just because more data's come through. But I'd rather see it done once than redone over and over again. And the other thing, I also feel that raised crosswalks are a wonderful improvement no matter where they are. You know, D Street in particular, in the afternoons, a lot of people jump over from E Street because the traffic's so bad, trying to skip the lights, and they roar down D Street from stoplight to stoplight to stop sign to stop sign. And it's frightening sometimes because I find myself gladly escorting some of my older or less mobile ambulatory clients across the street to their car. They're not going to walk down the block to the corner and cross over that way, which even those can be terrifying certain times of day. So the traffic that goes through there, I want people on D Street. I love my customers and the visitors that pass through. I do not want the traffic that's skipping over just to get from point A to point B 30 seconds quicker. So however that works out financially, or if it's not involved in this grant, I can understand that, but I do feel it's an important addition. Even if it is a mid-block, crosswalk, something, a deterrent or a moment where a vehicle can slow down a bit and let the pedestrians cross. I think it's just, paramount, no matter what,
And the lighting, a lot of people are involved with the lighting discussion, and I'm glad to hear that. I think that this is the beginning, like you said, and I know that we're going to talk about it a lot more. But there again, a thoughtful application that we can all live with. That's something that shows continuity and a thought-out plan, and not a lot of hodgepodge. I'm doing my lighting, you're doing yours, we're crisscrossing, we're sharing. I just don't want that look. I personally don't want that look. I think it's unprofessional looking.
Yeah.
Oh, she was.
Oh no, I was going to say thank you. I think this is fantastic. One thing that I do want to point out is I know that what we're coming with is really preliminary here. There's a lot of questions, there's not a lot of answers, and that's intentional because we're here to listen from the get-go. And so I just wanted to thank you all for giving us that preliminary input. I also wanted to check in on time. It is noon, and I know that this meeting was intended to go an hour. If you are heading out now, I completely understand the need to do that. I think we'll stick around so we can hear as many comments as we can, but please grab some pizza on the way out. There is pizza out there. Okay, thank you.
My only thought through this whole process was kind of what the purpose of the grant is, giving us about 275. Might not be as much, especially if you start engineering and designing and depending on what the need or the infrastructure needs will be. My thought is the purpose of this to improve the facilities or temporary events like a farmer's market place or a concert or wherever it may be, or to close down the street so we can have Friday afternoon concert, whatever it may be, right? Or is this kind of more long-term improvement so that we can spur more businesses, within D Street? So that's going to be a lot more costly, right? So I like what the city manager has to say. This is going to be leverage us to be able to do some of these higher level type of improvements. So that's great. So my thought is maybe start looking at piloting some things. Maybe, I think we still own the corner of C and 3rd. I don't know if we sold it yet, by the brick. I mean, maybe making that a focus place with using lighting. And I think of Disneyland, right? They use lighting a lot just to transform buildings and create colors and create, sense of place. So I don't know. So I don't know if light can actually come from underneath as well, not just coming from the top, or just focusing on walls and be able to use the walls and cover a beautiful building. So piloting stuff that we can, engage with the public and get some data and get some people to say, oh, that looks great, let's do more of that.
Yeah, so I heard some great suggestions there. Using this as a pilot, I think that's a really good word. That's not like officially what the grant was intended for, but I think it's an opportunity to pair this grant up. The intent of the grant is really because of the grantor, SACOG, they're transportation based, so we're really looking at pedestrians and bicycles. But how we interpret that, we have some flexibility. And so is that during special events or is that during daily use? I think that balance is one of the things we're trying to hit here. So the city has identified temporary bollards as really important, and that's for special events, obviously. But also this lighting, this is a daily thing. So there's a little of each in that. Yes.
I'd like to echo Heather's comment on priorities. You can only do so much with this budget, and there's wonderful suggestions here. Lighting. We humans are attracted to light. It's comforting, it creates safety, it creates a mood. And the crosswalks, I don't want to leave it at that, they're all good. What I've been thinking is this has been discussed, is this grant is for D Street. I'm thinking about, in our long-term thinking, expanding the scope and defining the scope. Certainly D, 3rd, 1st, and certain portions of C, and figure out what is the scope so we know what the challenge is in terms of grants. It's going to take multiple grants of this size to accomplish probably just D, right? But as long as we're thinking, let's define the scope as broadly, as reasonably broadly as possible, and then target that with a roadmap. This would be first, this would be second, this would be third. And then you have a plan. This has been great.
I really appreciate that, Mayor. Thank you.
Can I say something quick?
Yeah.
Mayor Branscombe goes to the CITICOG Transportation Committee, and you remember they talked about ATP Cycle 7 coming up? So active transportation, we're talking about biking and petting. Here's your person who can bring in the mega bucks, right?
Stop.
That's another opportunity.
They don't like it that much.
There's some real opportunities, as I think what we're hearing.
I don't have anything to add from what's been suggested. I think that, like Joe suggested about thinking about what happens on D Street during the daytime, particularly midsummer, is a huge safety concern, and I appreciate that being brought up. But I want to say thank you to this community. I mean, looking at that full house, this is pretty awesome. Anybody who knows me knows I'm an encourager, but look at this. This is really great to see. Thanks to Dan and Vincenzo and the city manager to put this together, the work that you've done, to see the Ellis Lake project coming together, this coming on, just to encourage everybody. This is really awesome to see the investment.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. A big thank you to Vincenzo, because this was really his grant on this one. He wrote this. Did a great job.
It sounds to me like the cafe lighting is something that everybody sort of wants, but it's not feasible right now. I do feel that there are a lot of things that should be done almost on a maintenance level and not so much on a grant level. I know the park, Blevins Park, could be leveled out because now with the Thursdays on Third Market coming, there's a lot of foot traffic and kids out there playing, and the ground is not level. So that's something that could potentially be done almost on an immediate maintenance level. And the parking, I don't know what they're called, but they sort of go into the parking spaces that hold the trash cans. Those
the islands.
The islands. The one right in front of my business is broken and has been broken for a long time, so I know that's a safety thing. And it doesn't really have to be into the grant, that's again in the city maintenance level. One other thing is that it sounds like the cafe lighting is very popular, so what if it was possible to do it at Blevins Park, not temporarily, but basically phase one as a starting point, and then continuing once there are more grants available.
Yeah, okay, so we have some interesting suggestions, and I think this idea of the parks or the lot spaces is a really interesting one and has some opportunity, but isn't a really great fit for this grant because it is geared towards transportation and streets specifically. And so I'm hearing this, cafe lighting, I'm hearing really, really strongly that this is what we want. And I heard this great suggestion over here, what if we just ran it alongside the streets instead of over the street? I think that's an excellent suggestion. It is feasible. This is something we can do. We just don't know how far we're going to be able to go with it with this grant. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm from San Francisco, so I've seen how cafeterias work and trolley systems and so forth, and I've seen the problems with anchoring them into older buildings and how you have that close. One is, I heard the suggestion about the existing poles. Will that take it past the height that you need to be? For some reason, I don't think that's accurate.
Do you know this one, John?
What's the height of the?
Can we use the existing poles to hang the? No.
I can answer that one. No.
No, because they're a top fixture.
So that's another. The other thing is how are these lights supposed to be on 24 hours a day?
No.
So you're just trying to illuminate. If you have the cafe or the shoreline with no bistros, mind you. What I'm trying to say is you're illuminating traffic areas, not pedestrian areas with that, basically. So you have a grant that's meant for walking. And so I understand the elevated sidewalks, because basically what you do is you're doing very low speed bumps at intersections, which
Yeah.
is, I agree with. You know, that's, because I walk downtown and all this too, and you can see that's what happens. And part of the problem when you're with little kids or elderly people is people are using this as a thoroughfare to escape the traffic lights. And so what happens is, and they're turning, and they're busy looking for other traffic, other cars. And they're not paying attention to what they're turning into when they're making those, you're turning right into pedestrians who are already in the crosswalk. And there's an amazing number of people here who don't know how to handle four-way stops anyway. So, you know, that's the reality. So you've got that. And I think that is, it sounds to me that's what the focus of your grant is. And the lighting is a safety issue that's tacked on to that.
So we have adequate lighting on D Street for vehicles. That is not a part of this grant. The idea of adding lights would be for pedestrians.
So maybe the lower.
Yeah. And so the reason why we've talked about having it up really high is if it's over the road, it needs to clear fire trucks under it.
Right.
But if we're not putting it over the road, there might be some other flexibility. You know, there's a lot of considerations in terms of maintenance, in terms of like how accessible is it. We want it to be not accessible for someone to grab, for example. We also have some other sort of safety emergency vehicle needs. So there'll be some coordination on how this turns out. Certainly, but the idea is that it would be attracting pedestrians to the area in the evening, and it would definitely not be on all night. That's a requirement.
Logistically, let's just to settle that issue. Talking about when you're talking about the big bistro lighting, which I don't think is actually the answer. You have to go higher than the existing street lamps. You also have to go deeper. So, what is the depth that you have to drill a hole to put it?
So these are not designed yet, and it will depend on a lot of different factors. So I can't tell you how the footings on those would go. That would require a geotechnical report.
Yeah, because I don't know if you're going to hit sewer lines or anything else.
So
there's
this is a good point.
There's a lot going on.
But it's probably, we're getting a little into the weeds, but maybe this will help. I just talked to our engineer who works with the county, or knows the folks at the county, and street lights, similar to what we're talking about, can run $20,000–$25,000 per street light. And that does not include the footing and everything else. And yes, we would have to make sure we're not hitting sewer lines with street light footings or bollards or whatever. So that's where a lot of that $100,000 is going to do that work, to understand how feasible it is. Anything's feasible with the right amount of money, but we don't have. We have a limited budget, so likely we'll be doing an exercise to see what it costs, not full design, but to understand roughly what it's going to cost to do something like that.
And this is the joy of having these multiple meetings as part of this process, is that we're hearing loud and clear that this kind of lighting is what the community is interested in, and now we get to go and iterate on that and explore it a little bit and come back to you with what we're recommending. And saying, you know, it might be that we're going to say, you know, we're not recommending it as part of this grant because it's going to require ABC, or we're going to take a different tact, and let's talk about it some more. And that's a part of the process, and that's an excellent part of the process. So I'm going to let that one go because we do have a bunch of other comments, and we're over time already. So I'm going to go ahead and move along from that particular comment. But that's not the end of the conversation.
The only thing I want to discuss was the bollards, with talking about temporary bollards, and you use the soft kinds of bollards versus the hard kinds that is cheaper. You probably don't have as much construction drill on holes in your.
There's a lot of different kinds of bollards, and we're going to recommend what we think would be like the best fit for the application of temporary bollards, and there's some different ways we can go, and we're going to want to look into that with a little more detail too. There's a lot of bollard options. You would be pretty surprised. There's more than just soft and hard.
There's American Embassy bollards, and then there's rubber bollards.
Yeah, we're not here like protecting a bank from vehicles attacking. So that's definitely not the kind of wall we use.
Hey Jesse, just a comment. So we'd like to totally wrap up maybe in 5 minutes more of questioning. Yeah, so we can keep that, yeah.
Has there been any communication with the building owners themselves about the lighting? Because I know I spoke with Dan before when we were trying to do the lighting for the Christmas and how we were going to figure that out. Has that communication started with the building owners themselves?
Sorry,
to be able to do the lights?
Couldn't hear the question.
So the question is, have we had any conversation with the building owners as opposed to the business owners?
So this is a good segue into one of our building owners who just purchased a building. So if we can hand that to, there's some building owners in the back. I mean, raise your hand, building owners, and maybe chime in here a little bit.
What was your question?
I was asking if there was any.
The question was regarding the lighting. How we discussed how fast the lighting.
We have not, because every building owns its own set of problems. Structurally, mechanically, you need to figure out if it takes 313 D Street, which is the old TJ North building. That whole facade is literally now 6 to 8 inches. So if you attach anything to that, that wall is not even attached to the building, other than just with the foam roof overlay. So it potentially is a health and safety issue at that point. So each building has to have an environmental impact study on it. So my question, did I answer that?
I know perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
My question is, as we move forward and everybody's learning how to write grants in this room, are you guys going to move beyond the lights and the lipsticks are sticking with all these little amenities and go with the structures on these buildings and start redoing the front facades? Are we going to look back?
I'm sorry, can you clarify your question?
Yeah, to clarify the question is are we going to start looking at grant money, start redoing the facades?
I can weigh in on that. Those are private businesses, private owners. I would love to see some of the owners invest in the buildings.
Well, the other question is the city back in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, is the one who got the block grant that forced it to put all those on. Now they're starting to fail. So how can you help the city? How can the city help each individual owner who has a facade that's failing?
I think we just offered a facade grant program to help partially with that. Anybody could have taken advantage of that.
I did. It was awesome.
Thank you.
First off, I wanted to thank Dan for getting us all in here. This is awesome, Dan. Thank you for reaching out to us. But the lights, I think I was thinking about the poles or whatnot. I mean, when I used to have a concert in the park, but a couple used to throw it. He asked me, hey, can I put some banners on the side of your building? I said, yeah, no, for sure. And we put anchors down, they put banners and stuff on the building. So why couldn't we just look at the owners of the buildings up and say, hey, can we string some lights? Put some anchors, and string lights across high as we want to go across the buildings. I think that would be great. I'm pretty sure they would all agree on that. Say, yeah, no, that's not a problem. And then with the great sidewalks, because from 3rd Street, 6th Street to 3rd Street, there's 16 sidewalks, crosswalks. That would need involve money. So costly, put some speed bumps in there. You know what I mean? Put some. There you go. There you go. Put some speed bumps in between, in between the streets to slow down the traffic because the traffic does get crazy, it does get fast. But I would say it'd be more costly to put the speed bumps than to put 16 sidewalks from 3rd to 6th and raise them up. That would just chew up on it.
Yeah, we definitely can't get crosswalks in, all the crosswalks in all the way with this grant budget. Raised crosswalks are not significantly more expensive than speed bumps. They're similar to speed bumps. It depends on the aesthetic choices. You know, if they're gonna have papers in them, papers are more expensive, for example. But they have other benefits too, so they do raise people up to be higher to eye level when you're crossing. So they have a lot of crossing safety included. That's not to say that we're not hearing the suggestion of speed bumps too.
What is it ranged up from 4 inches, 6 inches? I mean, you got a 6 foot tall guy walking across that. I mean, I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think 6 feet tall guys are usually the biggest concern for this.
But you know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. I mean, is it ranged up to 6 inches? I mean, it's not really. Let's slow the traffic down.
Yeah. Great. So we've got some great suggestions here. We really appreciate everyone coming out today. Thank you so much for all of your excellent input. And we will, if you signed up, and if you didn't sign up, you can sign up now, but if you did sign up, we'll contact you about the next meeting with more in detail.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
And a good afternoon to you. Ted Langdell, we are in City Hall in Marysville. Had some technical problems trying to get our signals started, so unfortunately we missed the initial presentation, but we believe we have recorded all of that. So we will be presenting this again a little later, probably later in the week, and we will let you know what is going on and let you see that presentation. So, live from Marysville City Hall. We've been having some problems, but hopefully you've been able to learn more about what was happening here today and have been able to enjoy learning something about this process. I'm Ted Langdell. You're watching Yuba-Sutter.LIVE, and maybe we get all of the graphics in, and we will again replay this at a time to be determined. From City Hall in Marysville, you're watching Yuba-Sutter.LIVE.